today we're reviewing the quadratic formula and we're learning about something called the discriminant.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a celebrity guest teacher this afternoon. He's from faraway BCIT Medford High School. He can't draw a straight line, but he can do linear algebra in no time. Please give a warm welcome to Mr. Rabel. Rabel.
Hi, kids. Stay tuned. I'll be back in a little bit.
Okay, so today we're doing the book work for the quadratic formula. It's 9-6. We're skipping example 1 because that goes over the proof of the quadratic formula. Not something you really need to know, but I will post a video of it if you're curious and would like to watch it. So, example 2, using the quadratic formula. Remember, quadratic formula is x equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That's quadratic formula. So we have our equation here, x squared minus 7 equals 4x. When we are using the quadratic formula, we have to make sure our equation is set equal to 0. So we are going to move over the 4x, subtract 4x, subtract 4x. Now we have x squared minus 4x minus 7 equals 0. A equals 1, B equals -4, and C equals -7. Plugging into quadratic formula, x equals the opposite of b is +4 plus or minus the square root of b squared, so -4 squared, minus 4ac all over 2a. Now we're going to simplify down. X equals 4 plus or minus the square root of -4 squared, that's 16. -4 times -7 is +28. All over 2. X equals 4 plus or minus 16 plus 28 is 44. Over 2. X equals 4 plus or minus. We can simplify this radical as we learned in class. We can simplify it to 4 times 11 over 2. Now the next step is that the square root of 4 is 2, so that comes out. So now we have 4 plus or minus 2 radical 11 over 2. Next, we're going to actually divide 2 into 4, and we're going to divide 2 into 2. So 2 goes into 4 twice, and 2 goes into 2 once. So now we have x equals 4. Oops, not 4, sorry. 2 goes into 4 twice. And then 2 goes into 2 once, so plus or minus radical 11. So our two solutions are x equals 2 plus radical 11 and x equals 2 minus radical 11. Now Mr. Rabel is going to teach you a word problem.
Thank you, Ms. Typer. So now we're going to start here with example 3. Example 3 is called finding approximate solutions. So there's a word problem here along with a function. You want to pause the video, take a minute, and copy that down, and then we will go into explaining it. So when we are dealing with quadratics and word problems, a lot of these we're going to talk about projectile motion. What projectile motion is basically you have some sort of object. It's starting either on the ground or in the air, and then it's going through the air, it's going up in the air, and then gravity works on it, forces it back down, and makes that parabola arc, that parabola motion. In this example, we're talking about a frog jumping off a rock. The function shown represents the height of a frog t seconds. So normally we use the variable x, Here, since we're talking about time, we're going to change that variable from x to t. So t seconds after it jumps off a rock, how many seconds is the frog in the air before it reaches the ground? So imagine you have a little rock here, you got Mr. Frog on the rock, he wants to jump, he jumps up in the air, goes back down, hits the ground, frog is now on the ground. So we want to know how long it takes him to go from rock to ground. Here we're going to use this function, y equals negative 16t squared plus 10t plus 0.75. So first, to use our quadratic formula, we need to identify our a, b, and c. A being that coefficient of the first term, negative 16. B, coefficient of the second term, negative 10. C, coefficient of our third term, 0.75. And now we can plug in. So we will have t equals the opposite, b was positive 10, got ahead of myself. B is positive 10, but when we go substitute in, now it will be a negative 10. So t equals negative 10 plus or minus the square root, b squared, so 10 squared, minus 4 times our a, negative 16 times our c, 0.75, all over 2 times our a is negative 16, so 2 times negative 16. So first thing we substitute everything in, now we can simplify. So negative 10 plus or minus the square root, 10 squared is 100, negative 4 times negative 16 is 48, or 64, sorry, negative 4 times negative 16 is 64, and then 64 times 0.75 will be 48, over 2 times negative 16, negative 32. We simplify that a little further. We have negative 10 plus or minus the square root of 148 all over negative 32. Ran out of room on this side here, so I'm just going to go ahead and slide it down to here. So now we have t equals down here. Now, in the previous example, you saw Ms. Tyfer, she simplified the radical as you guys have learned earlier in the year. And for this example, we are not talking about time, we're talking about seconds. So since we're talking about time, it won't make too much sense to keep it as a radical. You don't think about time being time as a radical. So we're going to take the square root of 148. So in this next step, we will have negative 10 plus or minus the square root of 148. And now the square root, since it's not a perfect square, is an irrational number. That decimal is going to continue forever. This is why it's called approximate solutions, because we're rounding that irrational number. And that will round to 12.17 over negative 32. Now that we have that radical simplified, we took the square root of 148 to 12.17. Now we can go to our two separate cases. One where 12.17 is positive, one where it's negative. So negative 10 plus 12.17 over negative 32. Negative 10 minus 12.17 over negative 32. We go to our next step here. We add our numerator. That becomes 2.17 over negative 32, which simplifies to negative 0.07. On our second case here, negative 10 minus 12.17, negative 22.17 over negative 32. That simplifies to 0.69. So right now we have two solutions. T equals negative 0.07, t equals 0.69. Now with our quadratics, this has two real solutions, but let's think for 1 second. Remember, what does t represent? Think back to the word problem. What does t represent? T represents seconds. We're talking about the time the frog is jumping in the air. Can a frog jump for negative seconds? Can a frog jump back in time? No. So even though we have two solutions we found, only one would be a solution to this word problem because we can't go back in time. This negative solution is what is called an extraneous solution. So we can cross that out, and our only solution will be our positive one, that 0.69. So it means it took the frog 0.69 seconds to jump from the rock to the ground. Now I'm going to hand off to Ms. Teifer, and she's going to teach you about how to find the discriminant of a quadratic equation.
Okay, so the discriminant. The discriminant is b squared minus 4ac. Okay, that's the discriminant. And it tells you the number of solutions of a quadratic equation. So we don't want to know what the solutions are now. We actually want to know how many solutions do we have. So there's 3 rules for this. If b squared minus 4ac is greater than 0, when you plug in your numbers, if you get something greater than 0, that means that there's 2 real solutions. The parabola is crossing the x-axis at 2 places. If b squared minus 4ac equals 0, there's only going to be 1 real solution, so it's only crossing the x-axis at 1 place. It's really just touching the x-axis. If b squared minus 4ac is less than 0, there's no real solutions. It doesn't cross the x-axis at all. So we have an example here, x squared minus 4x plus 3 equals 0. We're going to start with b squared. So b squared, that's negative 4 squared minus 4. A is 1, C is 3, negative 4 squared is 16, minus 12, and 16 minus 12 is 4. 4 is greater than 0, so that means that there are 2 real solutions. Mr. Rabel is going to teach you the next example.
Alright, now for example B, we have negative x squared plus 4x minus 4, once again, equal to 0. So using our discriminant formula, b squared minus 4ac, our b is our 4, so we have 4 squared minus 4 times our a being negative 1, times our c being negative 4. So as we simplify, 4 squared is 16. Negative 4 times negative 1 is positive 4. Positive 4 times negative 4, negative 16. 16 minus 16 is 0. So what that means now is that there's going to be 1 real solution. Anytime that discriminant is equal to 0, there's 1 real solution. This function would only cross the x-axis once, and that would be at the vertex, meaning there would be 1 real solution to this quadratic. Ms. Teifer is going to come back and do example C with you all now.
Okay, C is x squared minus 4x plus 5 equals 0. Okay, so b squared, negative 4 squared, minus 4, a is 1, c is 5. Negative 4 squared is 16, minus 4 times 5, which is 20. 16 minus 20 is negative 4. Negative 4 is not greater than 0, not equal to 0, but less than 0. So that means that we have no real solutions. There are no real solutions. So that means that the parabola is not crossing the x-axis at all. Okay, that is it for today.
Well, it was a pleasure teaching you all virtually. I hope to do it again soon.
Bye.